All right, so today we'll be looking at a new chapter, chapter 11, which is our first introduction to the foreign exchange markets. And I was able to find some very exciting videos to go along with this. So this should be a fun class. So anyway, why don't we begin at the beginning here, and then I'll start showing the videos. But first, we just want to mention here that foreign exchange, as you can see from the picture, refers to all the different currencies that trade in the world, and there are quite a few of them, as you can imagine. And in fact, you might be surprised to discover that every single day, about $5 trillion worth of currencies are traded. And so that's a lot of money, and that's every single day. So we say here that the price of one currency in terms of another is called an exchange rate. So this is what this chapter is really all about: foreign exchange or foreign currencies. And the price of one currency in terms of another will be defined as an exchange rate. And so I picked a few examples from yesterday's quotes or actually the day before, just these three, because these are three of the major currency pairs. And you can see in each case, I've got a number which tells me the price of buying one currency in terms of the other. So if you don't recognize this symbol, this is the British pound. And so this quote tells me that for each British pound that I'd like to buy, I would have to pay $1.41.66. So if you're going to London, this is a good number to know. In this second quote, this symbol represents the Japanese yen. And this quote says that for each dollar that I want to buy, I would have to pay 105.45 Japanese. And then finally, in this last case, you might recognize this symbol as the symbol for the euro, which is used by 19 European countries. And we'll talk about that as we go along. But right now, it will cost you about $1.21.56 to buy a single euro. So if you're going to France or Germany or Italy, you'll have to buy euros because all those countries are using the euro. And yes, and again, these symbols, which you may have seen before, maybe not, these are three of the major currency pairs along with the dollar. And so now if you notice, though, in this case, the quote is for so many dollars per pound. Same thing down here, it's so many dollars per euro. And yet in this case, the quote is so many yen per dollar. So it turns out that exchange rates can actually be quoted in two different but equivalent ways. So for example, let's take a look at this exchange rate between the dollar and the pound. What we can do is call that $1.4166 per pound. And in that case, we call this direct terms. Now, here's why. Because imagine in the United States, all prices are in terms of dollars. The price of lettuce, the price of gas, the price of sodas, whatever it is, it's always so many dollars per unit of the good that you're trying to buy. So it stands to reason that exchange rates in the US would tend to be quoted as so many dollars per unit of the foreign currency. And so here, if that's the case, you would be seeing this quote in the Wall Street Journal, and that would be considered what we will call direct terms because it's the domestic currency divided by the foreign currency. But not always. Sometimes you might see it quoted the other way around. So in the United States, since the pound is the foreign currency, a quote that tells us how many pounds it takes to buy a dollar would be defined as indirect terms because it's the foreign currency price of the dollar. All right, either one, they both mean the same thing. But it just so happens that for certain currencies, there's a tendency to quote them as so many dollars per unit of the foreign currency. And for other currencies, we tend to see the opposite. But all of them, can be directly quoted in both ways. Now, by the way, before we go on to the next slide, mathematically, how are these two quotes related to each other? How do we get from one to the other, do you think? Any ideas? Oh, I guess I'll have to give you a hint. If you took out your calculator and type 1 divided by 1.4166, what do you get? Oh my God, it's 0.7059. It's amazing. So in other words, these two quotes are inverses of each other. And so that's how we know that they're the same thing, because if it's $1.4166 per pound, it must be 0.7059 pounds per dollar. So we have to be prepared to use either quote. But like I said, certain currencies tend to be quoted as dollars per unit of that currency, and in others, it's the other way around. So here's an example. Now, this came out of the Wall Street Journal yesterday, and you can see there's a lot more quotes here. Now, here's one of the peculiarities, though. I do want to mention this, and I still don't know why this happens. The convention in the foreign exchange markets is to do this. This number actually means dollars per euro. And yet, if you notice over here, it says your dollar. Okay, in other words, they're backwards. Why is that done? I don't know. I'd have to investigate that. But this is how it's always been done. But when you see that, it actually means how many dollars does it take to buy a euro? So here, this is the dollar yen quote. This one is so many yen per dollar. And that's how they do it. So this one, for example, yeah, I have no idea what that's all about, why they do that. It means, to me, it makes no sense whatsoever. But this is how it's done. Now look at this one. Now you can tell, because I've explained it to you properly, that this actually means US dollars. And for the Australian dollar, we'll just write it as a dollar. Okay, same thing with the Canadian dollar. This means it takes more Canadian dollars than one. A dollar, 1.25 Canadian dollars roughly translates into a single US dollar. So if you went to Canada right now with your US dollars in your pocket, you could actually get a bargain. In other words, it's almost like everything in Canada is on sale for 25% off, because each dollar that you bring with you into the country will get you $1.25 worth of Canadian products. Okay, so remember that. Right now, it would be a good time to go to Canada. Now, this one is different. If you notice, there's no dollar mentioned here. It's so many yen per euro. And we'll explain what that means in a minute. Okay, this is coming up next. What happens, or what's going on with the exchange rates here that do not involve the US dollar? Now, here's an interesting case. CHF. You look at this and say, oh my God, what does that stand for? And it turns out that this actually is shorthand for the Swiss franc. So you're probably saying to yourself right about now, why in the world would they use CHF to stand for Swiss franc? Well, I'll tell you why. Because while we call the country Switzerland, their official name is very different. It's a Latin name. That's it right there. The official Latin name for Switzerland is Confederatio Helvetica, which is the name given to the country after they were founded in 1848. So you can see CH means Confederatio Helvetica. And so it's stuck ever since. And we call the Swiss franc CHF for the Swiss franc. Wow, that was weird. So it takes at the moment slightly more than one Swiss franc, which I don't think there's a separate currency symbol for the Swiss franc. Why don't we just write SF? And that is so many Swiss francs per euro. This one is the peso. This one means that it takes roughly 20 pesos to buy a dollar. It takes about 74 cents US to buy a New Zealand dollar. This is the one we saw earlier. This is dollars per British pound. Now here's another case where there's no dollar involved. It takes about 116 euros to buy a pound. SEK, that's the Swedish kroner. Swiss franc per dollar, wait a minute. Oh, that was euros. Okay, Swiss franc per dollar. It takes slightly less than 1 Swiss franc to buy a US dollar. This is the Chinese currency. It's apparently pronounced yen, which means it takes about 6.5 Chinese yen to buy a single dollar. This is something the Wall Street Journal has. It's an index. It's sort of an average of all these other currencies. I don't remember how exactly they define it, but we can look that up if we need to. Now, what I did want to point out again is that there's at least 2 cases here that do not involve dollars. Here's another one. What are those all about? Well, those are special cases that are referred to in the financial markets as cross exchange rates. Okay, so foreign exchange quote that does not involve the dollar is referred to as a cross exchange rate, or sometimes a cross rate. So based on the numbers I showed you earlier, if you take the quote of yen per dollar and multiply it by the quote of dollars per pound, this is what you'll end up with. This tells me that it takes almost 150 Japanese yen to buy a single British pound, which makes sense because it takes more than 100 yen to buy a dollar, and the dollar, we need to pay more than $1.40 to buy a pound. Therefore, it must cost even more yen to buy a pound. So this is the so-called cross exchange rate. But if you notice, it was derived from 2 other exchange rates, which do in fact involve the dollar. So directly or indirectly, the dollar is involved in all of these foreign exchange quotes. Now, why is that? Okay, what's so special about the dollar? Well, of course, the US is by far the largest economy in the world, and that's been the case for many decades now. And so the dollar has a special role in the foreign exchange markets. It's often referred to as, let me show you what this is called. It's called a vehicle currency. And a vehicle currency means the value or the currency against which all other exchange rates are quoted. And now the dollar has been in this position since basically right after World War I. Prior to that, as you can probably guess, the British pound was the world's vehicle currency. During the height of the British Empire, all the other currencies were quoted against the pound. Now, starting with the end of World War I, that switched over to the dollar. Now, there's always a lot of speculation in the press about, oh, yeah, this is going to change. One of these days, it'll be the euro or it'll be the yen or, who knows. There's always talk, but it never happens. The dollar is still officially the vehicle currency. A lot of foreign trade is quoted directly in dollars. A lot of countries, if you go there, you can spend your dollars without worrying about the local currency, especially if you've ever been to, let's say, the Caribbean. All those countries will take US dollars. They don't care. They'll just take your dollars. In fact, they'd rather have them than their own currencies. All right. So now, I think already we can show our first video. Hold on a second. I think, yeah, all right. Well, I'll tell you what, let's do one more thing and then we'll start looking at our first video. Now, up to this point, all those quotes that I showed you were for what we call spot exchange rates. A spot transaction is one in which a currency is bought or sold for immediate delivery. In other words, if I'm going to get on a plane to London tomorrow, I need to buy British pounds now. And so the price that I'm quoted is what we will call a spot exchange rate. But sometimes, and we'll see more about this later on, you may need to buy currency, but not just yet. In other words, I may need to buy them in the future. Let's say I'm an importer and I know that in 30 days I'll need to buy British pounds. I have the ability to go ahead and buy them now and take delivery in 30 days. This will be done normally in a special transaction with an investment bank or a foreign exchange dealer. But the bottom line here is that if I do that, the price that I'll pay is probably going to be different than the spot price. It will be known as a forward exchange rate. And this usually refers to delivery that takes place between 30 and 90 days in the future. All right, so we have two types of quotes. Most of them are spot exchange rates. All of the ones I showed you so far are spot exchange rates. They were meant for immediate delivery, but then we have the possibility, at least, of quotes for transactions that will not take place until some point in the future. So we're going to see later on how to determine forward exchange rates from these spot exchange rates. There's a mathematical formula that will let us do this directly. All right, so let's see. Now, we also have an arrangement that you can enter into called a currency swap, where basically what happens is you buy a currency now and you agree to sell it back in the future. So in other words, imagine again, you're an importer and you'll need pounds, but only for, let's say, 2 months. So what the swap lets you do is arrange both to buy the pounds and to sell them in the future. And the advantage of this setup is that both prices are known to us today. All right, so in other words, I agree to buy pounds today, but I agree to sell them back in, let's say, 2 months at a price that we've determined today. So this is a very commonly used transaction, as we'll see in a few minutes. Here's another example for you. An American company enters into a currency swap in which it agrees to exchange $140,000 for 100,000 British pounds today. So that implies that the spot exchange rate is $1.40 per pound, because that's the ratio of $140,000 to 100,000 pounds. But we also simultaneously agree to trade them back for $140,000 in 60 days. Now here, just by coincidence, the forward exchange rate is also $1.40, but it usually doesn't work out that way, because that's the price that applies to a transaction that will take place not today, but in 60 days. So this is a potentially very convenient arrangement for situations where we need the currency, but only for short periods of time. It's like a vacation. Suppose you're going to London for a week and you know you have to buy pounds now, but you'll have to sell your pounds back for dollars when you get back. It means that with a transaction like this, you can not only buy the pounds now, but lock in the price at which you can sell them back when you get home. So that would be an example of a currency swap. And of course, you can see why this could be so popular, because you can imagine that this price could change in 60 days. So this eliminates what we'll call foreign exchange risk, meaning that when we sell those pounds back, we already know how many dollars we'll get for them. We don't have to worry about that. So we've eliminated our foreign exchange risk by doing this. Now, I've got a chart here that shows you how the volume of trading in each of these types of transactions during a typical day. Now, it's a little outdated. This is for 2013, but it gives you an idea of how much trading takes place in these markets every single day. So look at this. That's a lot. So every day, the average transaction, $5.3 trillion, of which the majority were swaps. A slightly smaller percentage were spot transactions, meaning we were buying the currency immediately. A fairly small number were forward transactions, which means we're buying them for future delivery. This one we're going to see later on. These are options. This is not actual currencies. This is a security that gives you the right And we'll discuss this in much more depth later on, to buy or sell in the future. So in other words, it's a contract that says you can buy these currencies or sell them in the future, but you're not obligated to do so. And all that adds up to $5.3 trillion. That's a lot of money. That's not every year. That's every single day. That's a lot of trading. So we're going to explain as we go along how and why this is happening. In other words, why is there so much trade taking place in these currencies? What is going on? It's a massive, massive market. Okay, so we want to know why this is happening. And we will find that out sooner or later. All right, now, can you imagine what it must be by now? I'm sure it's even higher. All right, now one more thing I want to mention here. Now, currencies are traded typically not between individuals, but between what are called dealers. A foreign exchange dealer is a financial institution that buys and sells currencies, and it makes its profits by doing so. Virtually all of the major investment banks are also foreign exchange dealers. Okay, like for example, Citibank, Chase, these are all major foreign exchange dealers. So what happens then is that when they give you a price quote, in practice, they're not just giving you a single number, they're giving you two numbers. And you may have experienced this if you've ever gone to a foreign country and you needed to buy a foreign currency. If you look at the board with all the quotes, you probably notice something interesting. There are typically two numbers, not just one, but two, that tell you how much you could either buy your currency at or sell it for. And so these two numbers are known as the bid price and the ask or offer price. So the bid price is the one at which the bank or dealer is willing to buy the currency, and this is the one at which it's willing to sell it. So there's always two numbers. Now, if you forget which is which, just remember you are always at a disadvantage. Okay. In other words, you're paying the higher price and you're receiving the lower price on every transaction. And this is how the dealers make their money. All right. Has anyone here ever actually had to do that? You went to a foreign country, and let's say in the airport, you found a foreign exchange dealer and you bought some currencies, and you noticed on the big window that there were two numbers for every currency. Is that something that's ever happened to anyone in this class? By the way, you know what I discovered in my other class, and I didn't quite understand what happened. You can actually, if you want to say yes without actually saying yes, there's apparently a way you can give a thumbs up or a thumbs down with this thing. I don't understand it. Somebody tried to explain it to me and I didn't see what they were doing. Yes, that might be fun. All of a sudden there's a little thumbs up icon and I couldn't figure out what happened. So like, for example, I don't see it here. I don't see it up here. Where's that? Where do we see that? Mute. Well, maybe I'm not supposed to.
It should be like to the bottom of the bottom right of the screen. I don't know if yours shows the same, but there.
Maybe not. I mean, it's very possible that I'm not supposed to have those. I don't know. But technology doesn't like me anyway. If there's one person that it will fail for, I am that person. It does not like me. And
If
so I'm not.
Do you see the little smiley face in the bottom? The smiley face with the plus that says reactions?
Where would it be?
All the way on the bottom. I think when you're running the meeting, I know for me it's all the way to the right. I think when you're running the meeting, I don't remember.
Not there. That's where it is. Yeah. I figured as much.
Someone said to click, Morgan said to click on participants and then click on the icon with the reaction, I guess.
Really, I'm not seeing it.
Oh, no, did you click on the dot, dot, dot?
No. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, why would I want to put a thumbs up in there? But I don't see it. No, I'm glad you're helping. I know you're helping me, but oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. What's that? Now I hit a little thumb. Oh crap. What did that do? I gave a thumbs up to Morgan. I don't know. That was not my plan. Did you see an icon on your screen or something? I don't know what I just did. I don't think it. But anyway, allegedly, the keyword being allegedly, you have the ability to make a little thumbs up or thumbs down. Is anyone able to see it there anywhere? It's on your screen. Where would it be? Oh, there's one. Somebody figured it out. How did you do that? Everyone wants to know how you did that.
Well, I was saying the reactions button on the bottom right of the screen, but Morgan's saying you can go through participants.
It's participants if you're on an older version of Zoom. The newest update, you got to click on reactions.
Okay. And where does one find the reactions button?
The bottom of your screen.
Yes, I'm not supposed to have one because
Do you have like a record button?
Yeah.
Next to record, it should say reactions.
No.
Okay.
This is how always any new technology I get my hands on, it's always the same thing. It's supposed to do certain things and it never does. Instructions are always a disaster. They don't tell you anything you need to know. So, all right, let's just say that I'm not allowed to do this, but can you all find your thumbs up and thumbs down? Okay, so again, what precisely did you do just now? All right, well, let's just say that it's possible. Ooh, I don't know what this is doing here. Yeah, so anyway, so getting back to that last question, if you've never been to a foreign country, you can't answer this question, but you would have noticed that there's two prices. And there's two. And so, like, for example, let's say it looked like this. So that means that the dealer will buy at this price and the dealer sells at this price. So you can see whether you're buying or selling, you're at the disadvantage. In other words, you're going to pay the higher price to buy the pounds. And when you get back from London, you're going to be, and you try to trade your pounds back to the dealer, they'll give you less money than you paid for it. So the difference between the two is referred to as the bid-ask spread. And this is where their money comes from. I mean, that's how they make a living. Now here, the spread is very small. In fact, it's 148.17 minus 1.4797. It's only about 0.0017, less, it's really tiny. In practice, you're not going to get this kind of bid-ask spread unless you're buying a huge quantity of pounds. And in fact, when you see quotes, like in the Wall Street Journal, for example, this is not the bid or the ask price. You see how it says mid? This is the midpoint of the bid and ask prices. The reason why they have to do this is because the quotes that you get will depend on the size of the transaction that you want to make. So even with this number sitting here, if General Motors buys 100 million euros, their quote will be different than me if I want to buy 100 euros. But this is the midpoint of the bid-ask spread. So in other words, this is how they quote these numbers. They take the bid-ask price, usually for very large transactions, and the average or midpoint of those two is what you're actually seeing here. Anyway, the next time you go to a foreign country, take a good hard look at the numbers. Even if you're not, just anytime you're near a bank that sells foreign exchange, just look at the table, the board, I mean, and then you'll see that for each currency, there's two numbers, and you know that the lower one is what they'll let you sell it to them for, and the higher one is what you'll buy it for. And the difference between the two is where they get their profits from, and we call that the bid-ask spread. Okay. All right, so I'll tell you what, now I think we can start looking at some of these videos. We have enough background that we can start to look at them and understand what they're telling us. One of them is fairly involved. It actually looks ahead at a lot of what we'll be doing in this chapter, not just the exchange rates themselves, but before we look at that one, I want to show you one here. It's an interesting look at the symbols, the dollar, pound, and the yen symbols, because they all have these very interesting origins that you might not have known about. So let's take a look at this. First of all, I will, of course, send you the link in the chat room, and then we can all watch it on our own screens. This one is meant to be interesting and fun. All right, just remember that. Okay, so here's the chat room. Here's the link. And let's take a look at this thing. All right, I think you'll like it.
Many suggestions have been made about the origin of the knife. One of the most common
All right, has everyone watched it? Very good. All right. Now, I do want to point out, though, that in spite of the way they made it sound, there's still controversy about some of the origins of these currencies symbols, but those are probably as good theories as any. But in many cases, it's not absolutely clear. for sure where these symbols come from, because what happens is typically people start to get into the habit of referring to something with a symbol, and then it catches on, and everybody starts using it, and then nobody remembers where it came from in the first place. Like hashtag. Who started doing that? Who knows? Nobody knows. I don't think anyone knows where that came from. But all of a sudden, everybody uses it, and that's that. So, but that was a very interesting look at how, these symbols developed over time. Now, you notice how the British pound, though, was based on a Latin word, because, as you know, the Romans invaded England in 54 BC, sorry, AD, and that was when Julius Caesar was the emperor of Rome, and they stayed there for about 400 years, and they heavily influenced England. And so the British pound evolved soon after that. And so it made sense that a Latin word would ultimately be used to describe the British pound, because the Romans had been there for so many centuries. In fact, the pound is probably the oldest currency in the world. The yen, I don't know that much about the yen, but the euro, as we'll see in the next video, the euro was actually chosen. The European Central Commission that was chosen to choose a symbol, they actually made different designs available to the public, who chose the ones that they wanted. And so to a certain degree, unlike the other symbols, the euro was actually chosen by a direct vote by people in the Eurozone. So anyway, so the next video is interesting because it's more about the actual euro coins and notes themselves. Now, from what I guessed before, I guess nobody here has actually been to Europe, or at least not in a while. And so you know that there are 19 countries that share the euro as their common currency. We'll go over that history later on, but the euro is a common currency shared by 19 countries, and they all had to give up their own original currencies in order to join. And so the euro has only been around for about 20 years. And a lot of people didn't think it could work because, let's face it, that's a lot of countries to use the same currency, because you have to sort of adapt your economic policies towards a common policy that makes everybody happy. And there have been times when it appeared that certain countries might have to withdraw from the Eurozone. At one point, Italy looked like it might have to leave. There were a couple of times when Greece looked like it might have to leave. So it's had an interesting history, but it is essentially a brand new currency. But what was interesting is that because it is brand new, the coins and notes could be designed from scratch. In other words, it was possible to choose exactly what they were going to look like all at one time. And so this next video is a very interesting discussion about the notes and coins that are used in the Eurozone. And I think you'll find this extremely interesting. So why don't we take a look at this? This will be next. It's called The Secrets of the Euro, and it really is very fascinating. All right, hold on 1 second. All right, let me send that link off to you. And then we can start watching it. Very nice. Done. A few little duns. Now, was that one of the coolest videos you've ever seen in your life? Yes, it was. You can admit it. But you know what he didn't mention? I'm surprised because what's different, another huge difference between those Euro notes. Yes, exactly. I was going to say, in the United States, all of our bills are the same size. In most countries, it doesn't work that way. The bigger bills are physically bigger. I don't know if there's a pattern to them, but all I know is that in most countries, the bigger denomination bills are physically larger. And also they all have different colors. Even though in the US we have these, there's measures to prevent counterfeiting, but for all practical purposes, US dollars are all the same color. So ours are all the same color and the same size, but that's very unusual. And the Euro notes, as you can see, they are bigger and they have different colors for the different denominations. And that's kind of interesting. But who in the world would, in their right mind, imagine there could be a €0 bill? I mean, I think it's a clever idea if they're raising a lot of money that way, but it's just kind of startling to see the big number 0 there. Well, it didn't start that way, but yeah, like right now, I mean, those coins and notes are circulating throughout all 19 of those countries and taking the place of the original ones, which were all eventually eliminated. So it's quite interesting. And notice all the trouble they went through to make it hard to counterfeiting it. But like those little, like the things you can only see with the UV light and those lines on either side, that was pretty ingenious, I thought, where they have to line up. Otherwise, it can't be a real bill. What counterfeiter would know how to do that? And then all the symbols hiding in there and all this and that. Yeah, I'm guessing that counterfeiters are having a rough time these days, at least in the Eurozone, because yeah, those are very tough to replicate. Now, here's an interesting little activity that I'd like to do with you. The coins, as he mentioned, are all different. The notes are all the same, no matter which country you're in, but the coins are different. So I found on the internet this interesting activity which lets you play a game which you can show how much you understand these Euro coins. So this one, I think we can do it all together. Let's see, because I think none of us knows very much about these coins. So I'm going to go get that link right now and show you what I'm referring to. And so this is actually a quiz. And what you have to do when you start the quiz, each of these are Euro coins, and you have to figure out which country they belong to. All right. So here's how it's going to work. We're going to play the quiz. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, sorry. I have to turn this back on to play the game. So anyway, so the way this works is I'll turn it on. And then we're going to have to figure out which coin goes to which country. Now, if you think you know, you should say something, because in most cases, I don't know. So here we go. Cyprus. Who knows which one of these is Cyprus? I don't. I'm going to guess. How about that one? No. Okay. How about Andorra? How about that one? Oh. How about Slovakia? Oh, I don't know. How about that one? No. Austria. Ooh. Ah, Belgium. Nope, that was just a guess. Germany. Man, I don't know. Wow, this is tough. Oh boy. Latvia. Oh, somebody knows. Third row, fifth. All right. Oh, no, it was that one. Finland. Oh, how about Greece? Man, this is frustrating. Wow. So far, we don't have any right, do we? Monaco. Oops. Slovenia. Oops. Lithuania. Man, Spain. We can't get them all wrong. Ireland. Oh, we got one right. Portugal. Ooh, Italy. Now, how did I know? That's a very famous drawing by Leonardo da Vinci. Netherlands, Malta. I take that one because that looks like the symbol of the Knights Templar. Estonia, Luxembourg, Vatican City. That's the Pope. France, and San Marino. All right, 6 out of 23. All right, well, I think that's enough of that. All right, now this next video is more about the symbols themselves. Okay, so you'll find this interesting because we know we were seeing before the dollar and the pound and the euro and all. This one includes some very obscure ones. So let's take a look at this one. This is actually, it's a quiz, but it's a video quiz. All right, so I guarantee you're not going to get very many of them right, but it doesn't actually stop and let you guess. You'll be watching it and then it'll just tell you what the answers are, but you wait and see. I bet you'll get most of them wrong. All right, so let's check this one out. Okay, let me throw that in the chat room. And we'll turn off the screen sharing. And let's take a look at this thing. You wait and see. You're going to be frustrated. Well, how did you do? Not well, I bet. 4, yeah, only 2 wrong. I'm impressed. Those were tough. Yeah, I know. Some of them were obvious, but I mean, there's some really obscure ones in there. Oh, right. Somebody noticed. Oh, I didn't even see that. Somebody wrote Italy is the Vitruvian Man. That's right. That's exactly right. Morgan correctly called that one. All right. Well, anyway, now there's one more video. Now, this one is a serious video. Okay. No more fun and games. This is more of a discussion about what we've been doing up to this point, but it also goes a little further and it starts to explain how and why the values of exchange rates are what we see in the marketplace. In other words, he's going to try to address questions like why is it, for example, the case that as of today, you must pay $1.41.66 to buy a British pound. Why isn't it $1.50? Why isn't it $1.30? Okay, so this one is actually going to not only cover what we've been doing, but it will introduce some of the topics that we'll be looking at in the rest of this chapter. So this one is a little bit longer, but it's really well worth watching it. The fun ones are done, unfortunately. I think you'll agree they were fun. But now it's time for a serious video. So let me get this thing out.
Hey everyone,
Oh, no. All right, here we go. Let me send you the link in the chat box. And let's check it out.
I'm Mr. West, and you are economics.
Okay, very good. All right, so yeah, that one went quite a bit further ahead than where we are right now, so we may have to look at it again later on. But you can see a lot of the discussion in this chapter involves analyzing the currencies based on supply and demand, which of course you would have seen in any basic micro or macroeconomics course. But don't worry, we'll go through that again in great detail when we get to that part of the chapter. So, but they did make a good case to show how the reason why exchange rates are at the levels that they are now is it's really just nothing but supply and demand. And a lot of that comes down to which countries have the most attractive, um, let's say, the products that people want to buy the most, which countries have the best stock markets. No, when a country sells more products, oh, I see what you're saying. No, usually what causes a currency to get weaker is if a country has low interest rates, high inflation, or if people simply don't like to buy their products for whatever reason. Also, political turmoil is a problem. Anything that makes it less attractive to invest in a country or buy their products is going to make their currency weaker. Or anything that makes people nervous about investing in that country, like I said, political turmoil. Those are all things that can weaken a currency. And so the currencies are actually quite volatile. If you look at a graph of them over time, in fact, why don't we do that right now? Let's go take a look at, let's say, the exchange rate between the euro and the US over, I don't know how long. Let's go back a ways and just see. Now, this is only going back about 5 years, and you can see it bounces around all over the place. If we go back a little further, you can see, I mean, it's gotten as high as almost $1.50 per euro, and somewhere along the way, it took as little as $1.06 to buy or $7 to buy a euro. Actually, if we go back even further, there was actually a brief period when you could buy a euro for as little as about 85 cents right there. Yeah. So look how much it changes over time. So exchange rates tend to bounce around quite a bit. And part of the reason, well, we'll see some of the reasons for that later on when we analyze the supply and demand curves in great detail. But among all financial assets, currencies are among the most volatile. They change maybe the most quickly, partially because there's a lot of psychological factors that affect the strength of a currency. If investors are just nervous about a country, even if there's no specific reason for it, that is enough to cause people to sell that currency, and before you know it, the price is dropping. Or if people are just suddenly more optimistic about a country, they might find themselves buying that currency, and before you know it, the currency is going up, even if there's no specific economic reasons for it. So a lot of this has to do with confidence. Okay, there's a lot of confidence going on behind the scenes here. Now, just as a reminder here, you might remember that right about this period in time, well, maybe not. We'll go over this later on, but in this around this time frame, people are getting nervous about the euro for many reasons, among them being the debt crisis in Greece, where the Greeks were, let's just say that they owed a lot of money to foreign investors, and they were having a hard time paying their debts. And eventually Germany had to step in and bail them out. But for a while, it looked like that might not happen, and that Greece might actually have to leave the Eurozone. And so that made everybody very nervous. And so for a while, the euro was very, very weak. And then as Greece started to recover, the euro recovered too. And then things were going along fine. And all of a sudden we have COVID, and that pushes it down. And you can see there's all these ups and downs and ups and downs. So, but yes, all currencies go through these streaks where they feel that they're extremely strong. And then there are other periods where they're extremely weak. And so there's a lot of economic variables that can cause this, but certainly confidence is one of the major determinants of the values of exchange rates. And so that's why they can change so quickly, because people's confidence can change very quickly as well. Okay, so now let's see, where did we leave off here? Oh, okay. So yeah, they did mention it in a lot of cases, currencies can get stronger and weaker. Now, I do want to mention here, there's some important terminology that we need to be comfortable with. When a currency strengthens, the terminology that we use for that is to say that the currency has appreciated or gained in value. When it does the opposite, when a currency gets weaker, we say that it has depreciated. Okay, so those terms are pretty much unique to the foreign exchange markets. Strengthening means it has appreciated. Weakening means it has depreciated. So let's look at a couple of simple examples of this. All right, so let's say that we see these quotes in the Wall Street Journal. And let's say that all of a sudden, whoops, the exchange rate between the dollar and the pound goes from $1.5807 per pound up to $1.60 per pound. Well, which currency just got stronger and which one got weaker? Well, the logic here is this. It now takes more US dollars to buy a single British pound. And so therefore we say that the dollar has gotten weaker against the pound, or it has depreciated. At the same time though, if the dollar got weaker against the pound must have gotten stronger against the dollar. Okay, the pound has appreciated. Now, they can't both depreciate and they can't both appreciate. It must be that one currency strengthens or appreciates, the other one depreciates. And really, the bottom line is how many units of your currency does it take to buy another currency? This is how we determine which currency is getting stronger and which one is getting weaker. All right, now let's try another example of this. Let's look at the yen and the dollar. Now here we're looking at the yen per dollar exchange rate, which, as you know, this is typically quoted as so many yen per dollar. Here, all of a sudden, we went from 88.85 all the way up to 90. And so now we have to figure out which currency just got stronger and which one just got weaker. Now, the logic again is this: it takes more yen to buy a dollar, and therefore it must be the case that the yen has depreciated, which means the dollar has appreciated. All right. So again, just because the yen is, it takes more money to buy a dollar with a yen. Therefore, the yen is now weaker. It is said to be depreciated, and the dollar is the opposite. That means the dollar must have appreciated. All right. So you can't tell. The reason why I showed you these two examples is because you can't tell just by looking at how high this number is. It matters. What really matters is how much of one currency is needed to buy the other one. And that's how we can figure out which got stronger and which got weaker. All right. So now it turns out that these changes do have an impact on the domestic economy. And even more than just their impact on our trade deficit. So what we want to do is understand how this affects the economy. But because it's getting close to 4 o'clock, I think since this is a fairly complicated topic, which requires a lot of calculations, I think this one can wait until Monday. But in the meantime, I think you'll agree that we got a lot of fun stuff done today and a lot of serious stuff done today. And I'm sure that you may want to watch some of these videos again. And if you do, or play this game, here are the links right on Moodle, especially this game. If you know somebody who thinks they know a lot about the euro, you can challenge them to play this game and see what happens. Because it's not obvious in most cases why each coin belongs to each country. I don't know who most of those people were on those coins. There's just a few that I thought made sense, and that was it. All right, and this one too, the World's Currency Symbols Quiz. That was kind of fun too, although you don't get a chance to really get scored or anything, but it's still a lot of fun. So anyway, so I guess it's Thursday, it's getting late. Why don't we just cut it off here, and I'll see you all next Monday. Okay?
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
All right, you're welcome. All right, bye. See you later.